This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today it's Monday. It's March 4th, 2024. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. You can follow me on X at Corsi Jerome 1, CORSIJEROME, the number 1, all small case. And on Substack at jeromecorsiphd.substack.com. We're doing podcasts every weekday. The story I want to start out with today has to do with a German plot that was discussed and over the weekend was revealed. There was evidently a wiretapped conversation that was leaked out. And this is a pretty shocking story, because what it means is that what you have is a discussion that was taped of the Germans, top command, it was military command, and what they're talking about is blowing up this Crimea bridge with a German cruise missile. That's pretty serious, because what they're revealing, somehow or other, this tape got released. And there's a suggestion going around and discussion as to whether or not the Russians are trying to signal that they know NATO is thinking about entering the war more directly. If that happens, we're going to have a game-changing situation. It's pretty frightening. So German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Scholz, said he wants an investigation because Scholz is not going to allow the German military to use this Taurus cruise missile to take out the Crimean bridge. But the conversation that was recorded, participants were this Lieutenant General Garhartz, and he's a Inspector General of the Air Force, and one of the generals in the German military. And the purpose of the conversation was to prepare a meeting between these participants and various of the top government officials to say they wanted to use this Taurus system to take out the Crimea bridge. Now, if that's the case, if that's being discussed, that's a very serious development. And again, let's combine that with a couple more stories that I'm following today on the same subject of what's going on in the Ukraine war. We have not only that happening, but the Russia on Saturday and Sunday, they did some attacks on Odessa. Now, Odessa is a port on the Black Sea, and it's probably one of the last major seaports that Ukraine holds. It's more towards the center or western part of Ukraine. Russia holds all of the major sea area on the east of Ukraine on the Black Sea, and Crimea. And Sevastopol, which is a base Russia uses for access into the Atlantic through the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, is in Russian control. Now, if Russia takes out Odessa, that's the last port through which Ukraine can ship grain and receive goods. It would be a major strategic blow to Ukraine. And with a drone attack, it was serious. And again, Russia is looking at both at Kiev and at Odessa. And if Russia decides to go after both, it's a new development in the war that intensifies the war and expands the war in Ukraine. Now, at the same time, Ukraine's cross-border attacks on Russian territory have continued to intensify. So there was a rare Ukrainian drone attack that reached all the way to St. Petersburg, striking a residential building. Drone operations or long-range missile operations are being manned by NATO personnel. In fact, NATO enters the war directly. That enters the Ukrainian war. Russia is going to escalate. These developments in Ukraine are especially worrisome after Putin again is issuing another warning. So Putin, in his annual State of Russia speech, he noted that while accusing Russia of plans to attack NATO in Europe, the Western allies are selecting targets for striking our territory and talking about the possibility of sending a NATO contingent to Ukraine. Now, Putin's only saying that, I'm sure, because he's got intelligence that leads to that. And if there's this leak of a German military discussion about using a German cruise missile to take out this bridge in Crimea, Putin's onto it, and he's signaling to the West that this is not a good idea to do. Putin said, we remember the fate of those who sent their troop contingents to the territory of our country. That was a reference to Napoleon and Hitler. And he said the consequences for the potential invader will be far more tragic. It was a 2-hour speech before an audience of Russian lawmakers and top officials. And Putin was casting the Western leaders as reckless and irresponsible and declared that the West should keep in mind that, quote, we also have the weapons that can strike targets on their territory. And what they are now suggesting and scaring the world with, all that raises the real threat of a nuclear conflict that will mean the destruction of our civilization. Now, clearly, Putin is referring to, in part, Macron's, French president's, speech that he gave last week. And Macron said that it was on a Monday last week that sending Western troops on the ground in Ukraine is not, quote, ruled out, quote, in the future, after the issue was debated at a gathering of European leaders in Paris. Russia's full scale of invasion in Ukraine is now into its third year. And Macron said, we will do everything needed so Russia cannot win the war. Now, that was after a meeting of 20 European heads of state and government and other officials. And if Macron is discussing this, there has to be discussions going on internally within the State Department of the United States and the Pentagon and the CIA, together with Europe. And if they're contemplating expanding this war by a direct NATO involvement, our side is insane. This would quickly mean a nuclear war. Why? The problem with current conventional weapons and conventional warfare is that I think it's really impossible to fight a war like World War II. We have too much technological ability to control the battlefield, from satellites, missiles, various advanced weapons, cruise missiles, drones. It's almost impossible to think of a large-scale ground invasion when you can have so much firepower launched on it from a distance without necessarily involving any troops at all. And so the idea that we're going to engage in a land war with Russia, or that Ukraine is so important that we're going to go to a world war over Ukraine, reflects, I think, the absolute insanity of the people who are running our government right now. We've got a bunch of unelected bureaucrats, and this Neo-Marxism is carried to the point where it's become destructive. I pointed this out in my book, which, again, I urge you to read, which is this book on the truth about Neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy. And the point is that this Neo-Marxism, which has gripped our military, the admirals wearing dresses and transgenders, we are so dysfunctional right now. It's only destructive. It's negative. It destroys. It doesn't create. And so these books, which I've got up there, by the way, and you see them on the homepage, and I'm selling off, by the way, my stock of author's copies, especially Atomic Iran, which I encourage you to get, or Black Gold Stranglehold. They're all available there, and I will sign them and ship them to you. There's only a limited supply of them. Get some while they still last. The point about Russia is Putin is not warning the West idly. His intelligence tells him that, and I'm continuing to think, I don't have any reason to believe this, but I'm concluding from putting the pieces together that we're going to see the potential of a October surprise being an escalation of the war in Ukraine and very possibly the detonation of a nuclear weapon. I think Putin would first use tactical nuclear weapons. But again, if the West does attack directly puts troops on the ground and advanced weaponry into Ukraine to try to win Ukraine, then Putin's going to take out a bunch of NATO bases overnight, and we'll be in a world war. And we're at the edge of it. Now, if the Democrat demons, and I do mean demons these days, I think they become demonic. I think like Satan, they can only destroy. This Marxism has always produced death, famine, destruction. It's never produced the utopia that has been promised. And again, we're in the grips of this within the universities, teaching this gender insecurity, which is, in a sense, a form of psychological disease. I mean, schizophrenic at the minimum. And they're narcissistic, I think pathologically narcissistic, impulses not to permit free speech, not to allow debate, to have only their opinions heard, allows for no self-criticism. So we are into a very dangerous group running the country right now, in control of our news, in control of our institutions, in control of the bureaucracy. We have a bureaucratic state that is out of control and is deathly afraid that Donald Trump is going to sweep to election. Well, clearly Donald Trump is doing extremely well. He's winning everything. Of course, Nikki Haley won the Washington, D.C. primary, which is, big deal. I mean, even when the Justice Department wanted to indict me because they thought I had a tie to Julian Assange, that was under the Mueller investigation. I was their last linchpin. They said I was lying about not having a tie to Assange. They offered me a plea deal. I told them I was not going to take their plea deal. They never indicted me. But they said they were going to put me to get me scared to take the plea deal. The Justice Department said I would be indicted in front of a jury in Washington that would convict me, even if I was innocent, because the jury would hate Trump. That's how politicized our justice system has gotten. Now, with regards to Donald Trump, I think we could have even today a decision on this 14th Amendment taking Donald Trump off the ballot. And I suspect Donald Trump is going to win this, which will be a massive blow to the lawfare. And Donald Trump looks unstoppable. I think the case in Georgia is falling apart with this Fani Willis. It was a clown show, the inquiry into her and her lover. It was a disgrace. And the Biden inquiry into impeachment is proceeding. Testimony that they're getting at this House committee looks to me like it's going to lead to charges of impeachment coming to the floor to be voted on. If that's the case, we will have an impeachment trial for Biden. Now, it's hard to imagine how we're going to have an impeachment trial for Biden when the Department of Justice said he's too demented to face criminal charges for his potential misuse of security documents, classified documents. I mean, how can we have a president in the White House who's being ridiculed internationally for his dementia, and we're all supposed to ignore it? How can you have the head of state be mentally incapacitated? Well, as Putin again said, and I think we're getting more truth from Putin than we're getting from our own media right now, that Biden is not running the country. And obviously that's the case, which means who is? Well, the likely candidate is Barack Obama. And Obama wants a fundamental change of America. It takes a nuclear war to get it. I think Barack Obama is probably in. Why? These people are depopulationists. This insanity is a spiritual warfare. We are in final days. I mean, this is really the last big battle that has been prophesied as the apocalypse, Armageddon, is on the horizon. And I hate to be saying this, but in fact, I'm telling you the truth from what's available in the news. And it's now becoming more and more clearly broadcast. And Putin is pushing the envelope, back channeling through Tucker Carlson and anybody else who will listen to him. And believe me, the signs are obvious. I am not in touch with Putin, nor do I intend to be in touch with Putin. I have no desire to talk to Putin or to be a back channel. But I am aware that back channels exist and are being used, and that Putin is desperately trying to communicate to the American people that our leaders would go to nuclear war. Okay, now a couple of other stories that are really important. Again, today the stories are out about the Federal Reserve. our Federal Reserve Chairman Powell will not say how much gold we actually have in our reserves. Why is the concern? Because after the United States imposed sanctions, joining Europe, sanctions against Russia for invading Ukraine, and we weaponized the financial system by depriving Russia of their $650 billion gold and Forex reserves. Those are trading reserves. We froze those. So a large number of central banks started to express concern and have begun withdrawing their gold. Now, a lot of the gold we have in places like Fort Knox, we're holding in a custodial fashion. We didn't actually ship it to the countries that own it, but it's there earmarked for those countries. We don't own that gold necessarily. And we have not gotten accurate representations of how much gold is actually there. And the Federal Reserve Chairman has now stated the obvious, that the Federal Reserve does not hold all the gold, but it holds it as a custodian for other entities. Well, that's been well known. Okay, and they're now starting with the pressure. The Federal Reserve finally, in New York Federal Reserve Bank of New York, finally said that they have like 508,000 gold bars. They have not made a new estimate of that since 2019. And again, the statistics that we're getting, we have no way to verify how accurate they are. So the withdrawal of Russian and Ukrainian gold, or the attempt to withdraw it, has led to other nations withdrawing gold. And when we're doing tens of billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine, Ukraine doesn't need to sell its gold reserves when they're getting all this money. But Ukraine may also still fear that it needs to get control of its gold as a last measure of national security. Now, why is this important? Because we are going into an economic crisis. There's so many signs of it. The commercial real estate market is underwater because of the vacancies. Our cities are deteriorating. We're finding in our cities that the number of new immigrants that are piled up in New York City in hotels, the Democratic control of these cities, which let prisoners out of jails, which refuses with Soros prosecutors to prosecute people who have committed crimes. Our cities are getting to be unsafe, and they're deteriorating. And in this condition, you're finding that the economic security of the United States is at risk of major cities like Los Angeles, New York, Detroit, Chicago going bankrupt. And if they go bankrupt, we've got a major financial crisis. This is building, and it's building fast. And there's so much credit. We have going to headed to $34 trillion in debt as a nation. And we're now passing another continuing resolution this week to keep the government open. And we're spending more billions of dollars. Biden wants to spend more billions in Ukraine. This money is being stolen. Increasingly, people are coming to the realizations that the Mexican drug cartels control the border and that we are the Mexican drug cartels. You can't run a drug cartel without a bank. You can't drive around semi-full trailers of $100 bills. At the same time, we're also in the pedophilia market with all of these children coming across the border unaccompanied, or in Ukraine, where they're coming out, where their parents are killed or they're separated from their parents. These are easy targets. The demonic nature of our governments lying to us is epic. It's got to stop. It'll stop with a major economic crash. And that's in the making. Do get a copy of this free book. Okay, the free book is How a Historic Gold Rush Will Be Caused by a Major Global Crash, which is coming. Call Swiss America and get this, 1-800-519-6268. Swiss America has been a sponsor of my work since 2004. But what's happened is whenever these economic crises occur, gold doubles in price. And right now, gold is trading at $2,083 an ounce. Now, that's over the $2,000 mark steadily in 2024. If gold gets over 2,100, its price is going to start accelerating. The time to get in on a increase in price of a commodity like gold is now. If you wait too long, it's going to cost more to get gold. And your dollars are depreciating massively in their purchasing power. I think we're at a point where we're just at the edge of having other nations not take and buy treasury securities, because it's not that we won't repay them, but we're going to repay them in dollars which have much less purchasing power, which is in effect a discount. It is in fact a depreciation of the value of that bond. And if the Federal Reserve and other banks were really to mark the securities they're holding and their asset base to market, many of them would already be bankrupt, because a lot of these securities that were sold at zero coupon under Obama have to now be deeply discounted. The gold story is going to become increasingly important, and we're going to follow it. And please do follow our sponsors. If you like the program, it's our sponsors that are keeping us going. Okay, now I want to cover one more story, and this is, again, the climate insanity. There's a story in the Epoch Times about how scientists are finally getting worried about the irreversible climate geoengineering that is being discussed. And I think increasingly now it's obvious that the chemtrails were real. All these things that were conspiracy theories are happening to be fact. We're finding that increasingly. And the world is backing away from the idea that we've got to be at net zero carbon emissions, or that we're heading through the 1.5 degrees Celsius increase over pre-industrial times, and somehow that's a danger point where the Earth is going to heat up and we'll have catastrophic weather events like hurricanes, tornadoes. We've always had hurricanes and tornadoes. It's part of the weather distribution, weather functions in the Earth to take the sunlight that hits the equator and to distribute it to the poles and the upper atmosphere. It's a complex system. It is not caused by carbon dioxide, which has a very, very small effect. But yeah, we're talking about these crazy schemes like, putting pure water vapor and to form ice crystals high in the altitude to block the sun. I mean, can you imagine we want to block the sun? I mean, the sun gives Earth life. Carbon dioxide has plants growing. Earth is greener today because it's warm and it has abundant carbon dioxide. It's not a noxious chemical. And the Earth can get warmer. It's going to get minimally warmer because of an increase in carbon dioxide. But they're talking about putting a sun shield to block the sun. They're talking about putting chemicals in the atmosphere, these solar shields and these other, finally admitting the geoengineering to reduce the solar radiation that's absorbed by the Earth to mitigate the effects of climate change. This is another form of insanity. So scientists are beginning to say this is dangerous. You begin to modify the Earth's fundamental climate, or the amount of sun that's hitting the Earth. They're finally implicitly admitting that the sun is the major driver of Earth's light and heat, which should be obvious. The yellow thing up in the sky is not just a sky ornament. The sun is our major source of radiation on Earth. You can tell that because at night, when the sun isn't up there because the Earth rotates, it's dark. And when it's dark, we have a lot of the irradiance the Earth has absorbed going back out into space. We did not have these agents that contain the heat. Carbon dioxide, a minimal one. Water vapor, 70% of all greenhouse gases. If we didn't have greenhouse gases, Earth would not be habitable. It would be too cold in the night. And we should know that the Earth goes through cycles every 100,000 years because of the Milankovitch cycles, how we go around the Earth in an elliptical orbit. When it gets more elliptical, and we're in the most extreme distance from the sun, we have an ice age. When the sun burns less hot, we have a little ice age like we did in the Napoleonic era. Again, Putin's remembering that because Napoleon's army froze to death coming out of Moscow. These are fundamental realities, and somehow the left doesn't seem to care about truth. I think we're engaged here in a spiritual battle, and I want to talk about that, but I want to give Chris an opportunity here to comment on the stories we've covered today, because it's insane to think that this neo-Marxism is leading us in a direction which could cause World War III, but I think we're headed there.
I think you might remember that Simpsons episode where Montgomery Burns tried to block out the sun.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that was. I mean, we laughed at it. We thought it was hilarious. We thought, what kind of idiot would try to do that? And of course, Gates comes around and tries saying, well, maybe we should block out the sun or try to knock it off because it's causing so many problems here. The sun, for trillions of years or billions of years, has given life to this planet.
Yeah,
do you realize how first off, they're trying to destroy the sun and trying to stop carbon dioxide, which basically would kill off a lot of the plants anyway. Trees, plants, everything else.
These people are demons. They want to kill. It's a death cult. The Democrats are going to run for presidency on the right of a woman to control her biological reproductive system, which means kill babies in the womb, chop them up for their body parts. And these only God can give life. I'm going to cover this in a second, but this is demonic, and we are in a demonic era where the demons are running around wild. It's got to stop, and the only way to stop it is with the truth. I want to end here, Chris, with something that I want to read again. What Archbishop Vigano is writing. He is an archbishop. He was papal nuncio in the United States for many years until he started criticizing Pope Francis. And Pope Francis took him away from that position, and he's now essentially in exile. He's still an archbishop. They don't know what to do with him in the Catholic Church. And he's writing very, very brilliant things, saying directly, telling the truth about what we are experiencing in terms of this demonic hold on the world. And I'm going to conclude by my usual theme, which is in the end, God always wins, and God will win here too. But listen to what Archbishop Vigano is saying. He's saying we're all aware of the perpetrators of this crime against God and humanity. He's saying it's an attack that's unprecedented in the history of the human race. We've witnessed the complicity of national and international institutions. He's saying we're seeing a social engineering operation carried out to manipulate consciousness through terror attacks, threats, blackmail, violation of citizens' most sacrosanct fundamental rights. The judiciary has been silent. The armed forces have looked the other way, and teachers and priests have zealously cooperated. That's a pretty frightening scenario. And he's saying that money's not just the motive for this crime, just not money alone. It's also a lust for the enrichment motivating many is the will to power. And that's the power of the subversive Davos elite, which intends to establish the new world order. This whole idea of a will for power is fundamental to the critical race theory, the critical gender theory, the Neo-Marxism. The Democratic Party's become a Marxist party, and they have embraced these various narratives which are destructive, getting children who are not even in puberty to alter their body parts permanently by surgery that they cannot recover from. And if the parents object, then the children can be taken away from the parents already in certain states. What the Archbishop is saying is 15-minute cities, digital identity, electronic money, destruction of agriculture and ranching all serve the same purpose stated in Agenda 2030 and the Rockefeller Foundation's Great Reset Project. The wars in Ukraine and Palestine also have the same purpose to destabilize the international order, create permanent crises, and fuel conflicts that will impoverish individual nations and feed the globalist Leviathan. That's the whole point. is that this is a mad grab for power by demonic forces. And he says this global coup d'etat must be denounced, and all of those responsible tried and judged by an international court. Again, the Nuremberg laws apply. There are human freedoms that are being violated here daily. And the idea that these governments consider human beings to be useless, which is being proclaimed openly now by Harari, this Noah Harari, who the World Economic Forum is marginalizing as an agenda setter. Well, let's go back to Archbishop Vigano. Above all, it's necessary for us to understand that this all-out war against humanity is not motivated only by the lust for power and wealth, but mainly by a religious motive, a theological motive. This reason is Satan's hatred of God, hatred of God's creation, and hatred of man who is created in the image and likeness of God. Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, George Soros, and the hundreds of servants whom they blackmail in governments all hate God. They hate life, which only God can give. They hate love, which comes only from God. They hate peace, which can reign only where Christ reigns. As Tucker Carlson said a few days ago, we are facing people who serve Satan and the demons of hell, just as the normal people worship and serve God. In the end, God will win. God will win here too. But we are going to get a judgment of God. Largely, the American population has become secular, have turned from God. We've taken God out of our schools. We had Supreme Court decisions going back to the 1940s, which demonize God. Yet we can have Satan clubs in the high schools. We will encourage you to, the only remedy, join me in what the Bible suggests, 2 Chronicles 7:14. We've got to get down on our knees and ask God for forgiveness. We've got to repent for letting the world get to this place. It will only be turned around with the assistance of God. And 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if we do repent, if we do ask God to forgive us for this, God will hear our plea and heal our land. Otherwise, we're headed towards a nuclear war. And if that's what's taken, if these people decide, these people being the CIA, the Pentagon, Department of Defense, the State Department, they decide that a nuclear war is what's needed to stop Donald Trump, to cancel the election, I wouldn't put it past them. And we've got to be vigilant here. We've got to insist that these prosecutions of Trump stop. They're completely without basis. It is legitimate to question elections. Certainly, Al Gore was not questioned when he did so in 2020, questioning whether or not George W. Bush had won Florida. We need to return to an open society where criticism and debate is possible. I'm convinced I'm still being shadow banned on X. It's hard to get any traction. You know, Twitter took away all my followers when they canceled me. Around 2020, I didn't get them back, and it's very hard to gain any traction on X. I'm being shadow banned. All these platforms are shadow banning. I'm encouraging people to go to CloutHub. CloutHub is not shadow banning. It is not censoring. We're getting there the kind of viewership that we had before and should have if we weren't being shadow banned. The devil can't stand the truth. And what's going to defeat Satan is the light of day, the strength of truth, and the power to proclaim it, the courage to proclaim it. And we will do that on thetruthcentral.com. Chris, if you will, go back to the homepage. Take a look at, as opposed to this death cult, take a look at My Vital C on the homepage, where we are, in fact, this miracle molecule, carbon-60, which has longevity principles. Take a look at it. If you like it, try it. It comes in a olive oil formulation or avocado oil. It's available for cats and dogs. I've taken it every day now for going on to 5 years, and I can attest that it has longevity properties. It assists sleeping. It assists thinking. I have personal testimony. It's not FDA approved. Hair growth, I've used it for the hair growth, and the skin creams. Try them. These products are exceptionally good. But these are for health. These are for life. I'm recreating telemedicine companies. We'll be talking about those shortly. I'll be launching them in a major way. In the end, God will win. God will win here too. And Chris, if you go back to the homepage, just show the sites for a minute where we are broadcasting. We are broadcasting on many different sites on weekdays. Cloud Hub, I think, is the one I'm encouraging you to go to, but we're on many others. Chris, you want to note them?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Amazon Music, Amazon Alexa as well. TuneIn, Castbox, GeoSawn. Yes, we're around the world here. You can also find us on Rumble, BitChute, and yes, YouTube when they allow us.
And we're on social media, a lot of social media. Also the podcast you can listen to on the truthcentral.com website. We've archived various of the podcasts. There's a lot of information on here in Swiss America and My Vital C. Please take a look at it. I'm selling my stock of books. Those are available through these e-pipes. And take a look at the author copy for books where I'm selling the ones I have in my stock, which is limited, my author's copies. I'll sign them and send them to you. You can buy it right through those e-pipes. Just click the buy the book or grab the book, and you can get, I'll send the books to you. It's Dr. Jerome Corsi today. It's Monday. It's March 4th, 2024. These are desperate times, but these are also times which call for us to be heroic, for us to be vigilant in professing and pursuing truth, and loving God, and embracing Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. With Dr. Jerome Corsi, we'll be back tomorrow. We're broadcasting The Truth Central every weekday. Thank you for joining us. God bless.